Hello everyone, it's me, Minty. Today is a new video on the Let's Talk About series, which I really need to ramp up the tempo on. I will be working more on it as I want to finish this series at some point in my life. In 2024, in the last edition of this series, I talked about Ivypool, and looking at the allegiances, today's Jayfeather's turn. But I also felt it was best to include Alderheart in this video, as they are mostly shown together in the latest arcs. I'm a bit excited as after this I will finally be getting into the background characters, which is why I created Let's Talk About in the first place. I'm going to be honest, it's difficult making a video about Jayfeather and Alderheart which aren't basically biographies. The first instinct for many of us when talking about a character is to kind of go through their whole lives and discuss every single event. But that's not my goal when discussing the more major characters in the series. I want to discuss my feelings about them and what roles they play in the current books. Ivypool was an exception, because I was also talking about their Super Edition. I will be more biography-like with the background characters, as there simply isn't as much to talk about. And if I do it with the major characters, the chances are I just repeat what you already know and the video ends up being way too long. So in this video, I'll do my best to stick to the more modern day. Another thing I'm going to be honest about is that maybe it will shock you, but I just don't have many feelings about either of them. It doesn't mean I have no feelings. I like them both and care about them and their place in the series. They're just not the characters I'd go out of my way to make a video about. I think it might be because it's been so long since I read Power of Three, and I listened to most of the Omen of the Stars and the Vision of Shadows books as audiobooks while falling asleep. As a result, I didn't really connect with those two arcs or most of the characters. If I read the physical books today and reread Power of Three, my view might be different, but I don't have the time right now to read 3 arcs before I'm planning on releasing this video. Before going into deeper discussion, I feel it's best to start off with my opinion on them both, as it could be good context for why I have certain views on things I'll discuss later. Starting off with Jayfeather, he's been around for a very long time and has been loved for many years. No matter what your opinion on him is, you have to admit that he has a very unique personality, and as a result, he's someone who stands out among the more generic characters. The way he's written in these books makes him very interesting. He's grumpy and likes to make it clear what he thinks, but he's not a jerk. While I don't have an opinion on him as strong and passionate as many others, I definitely see why he is so loved. There aren't any other Jayfeathers in this series, which makes him easy to get attached to. Unfortunately, a lot of former protagonists turn more generic after their time is over, and some easily fade into the background. But I would say the authors have done a good job with keeping his personality consistent, and with keeping him in the story without him necessarily being the focus. Of course, part of this is due to him being a medicine cat. That alone will give him more screen time than many other characters. But keeping him so consistent, while being able to resist the urge to make him the spotlight, is something that I think benefits his character. It's both annoying when a former main character completely fades into the background, and when they are forced into the story where they don't belong. Another good example of how to use a former main character is Sunbeam. They incorporate her easily into Moonpaw's story by making her her mentor, but the use of her in Teaching Skies is natural, not forced. It's clear to me that Jayfeather still has a purpose for the series, and the story would lose something by killing him off, unlike with Lionblaze. I couldn't care less if he just died next book. He has brought nothing necessary to the story for years. Going over to Alderheart, I don't have as many opinions on him as, again, I only got through a Vision of Shadows through audiobooks while falling asleep. And because of that, I didn't connect to the story as much as I would have through physical books. But I've just started reading the Apprentice's quests, so if my opinion on him changes after finishing the arc, I might make a new video for him. Alderheart is a bit interesting, I just don't find him as interesting as Jayfeather. He has come far from being that anxious apprentice, but that deep kindness and gentleness he has shows through a lot in certain moments. While I like Alderheart's personality, I have to admit he's not the only Alderheart out there. That description I just gave of him could also be used for Shadowsight or Rootspring. That being said, I feel that just like with Jayfeather, he has a clear purpose for sticking around. But unlike Jayfeather, I don't feel him dying would only be bad for the story. If it were to happen, I feel like it could contribute to the story in a good way if it's done for the right reasons, fits with the rest of the story, and drives the plot forward. Basically, Jayfeather dying would only hurt the story in my eyes, while Alderheart dying could elevate the story if done for the right reasons, and if it's executed perfectly. But to be clear, I still want him to stick around. He shouldn't die before Jayfeather, it wouldn't feel right. Every time I think of Alderheart, I get a bit of nostalgia, as he brings back a core memory. In the fall of 2018, I went to Paris with my family, and we went into a bookstore there. I don't really remember why, and there, in Paris, I found a copy of The Apprentice's Quest in English. If I remember correctly, this was one of the very few copies in that bookstore, if not the only one, and they had no other Warriors books in English, at least not on that shelf. This was back when I was reading the books in Swedish and was waiting for Starlight to get translated. So The Apprentice's Quest was far from being translated to Swedish, and it still hasn't been translated now in 2016. I didn't know yet about this thing called online stores, so 12-year-old me thought this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I bought it. Still today, I remember the excitement I felt when I found that book. And since Alderheart is on the cover, his character is attached to this memory. Now I want to discuss Jayfeather and Alderheart in the latest arcs, especially the current one, as it seems they are getting more involved in the story and might be one of the central characters. Starting with the Broken Code, I don't recall them having the biggest role to play in that arc. Of course, they got a boost from being medicine cats, and they had some involvement with the plot as they were both exiled by Bramblestar. While the level of their involvement was fine, I think the way they were written and when they were included could have been done better. It's yet another flaw in the Broken Code. Especially in Lost Stars, they messed up Jayfeather's character. They made him a big jerk. I get it was supposed to show he wasn't himself because Leafpool died, but oh my god, could you not make it more subtle? I think they could have been better used for the story than they were. But also to do that you would have had to change up some things. I would have loved to maybe have a scene in The Silent Thaw, where Bristlefrost overhears Alderheart and Jayfeather telling someone or talking to each other about Bramblestar's weird behavior. This could have been used as one of the things that made Bristlefrost realize Bramblestar was an imposter, because if his children think something is off, then it's hard to argue that everyone is just imagining things. So yeah, I think their inclusion in the Broken Code could have been done a bit differently, but overall it isn't something that brings this arc down for me, it's more of a tiny detail. I don't recall them being very involved in a Starless clan, but it's understandable as Nightheart and Sunbeam don't really have any sort of connection to Jayfeather or Alderheart. Well, Alderheart is Nightheart's uncle, but when has the story team ever remembered family relations outside of parents and siblings? I think their characterization was fine. They felt like themselves and they appeared where I feel they were supposed to. There weren't forced appearances due to them being medicine cats and former protagonists. They were there when the story needed them, and in the context of the arc and the characters we had, that's fine by me. Changing skies is where it gets more interesting though. Because here, it seems Jayfeather and Alderheart, especially Jayfeather, have become more relevant to the story, as they interact a lot with Moonpaw. Jayfeather and Alderheart must know something is off with Moonpaw, and in Hidden Moon it felt like they stepped into a bit of a supportive/protective role. I think the direction right now is that their role will grow and they will play a bigger part as supportive and at least a bit of protective figures. That's why I brought up the hypothetical scenario of one of them dying. It just kind of made sense to me that it could be a way for them to fulfill that role as protective figures by sacrificing themselves to save Moonpaw. But they won't. That was just me stretching my imagination. But when I thought of Alderheart, I just got an image in my head of him protecting Moonpaw. But to be clear, I don't want any of them to die soon. I think they will continue to play a big part in the current arc. Quick spoiler alert for the blurb of Chasing Shadows. We know that Moonpaw will tell her clan about her dead sister's ghost basically as soon as the book starts. Probably. So I wonder if that might result in her becoming a medicine cat apprentice, or at least her spending a lot more time in the medicine den. I think Jayfeather and Alderheart will be among her inner circle for the rest of Changing Skies, and I'm interested in how that affects the arc, and how possibly being a medicine cat apprentice could change how Moonpa interacts with her clanmates. The last time we had a medicine cat apprentice in ThunderClan was Alderheart, so I wouldn't complain about going a few books with one. Another thing that could point to Jayfeather and Alderheart having a bigger role in the future books in this arc is the Crowfeather cliffhanger at the end of Hidden Moon. This is something I found in this video. I can't remember if it was Bright Guardian Akira or Hawks, but one of them mentioned that maybe Crowfeather broke his spine and he will be brought to ThunderClan due to Jayfeather's experience with Briarlight. I personally hope this doesn't happen. I hope Crowfeather died and we don't have to live with a romance that nobody asked for. But I have to say that this scenario is very possible. And since Tawnypelt is in ThunderClan, she would visit him in the medicine den, and would get to see even more of Jayfeather. If this prediction were to become true, I'm also interested in how Crowfeather and Jayfeather will interact with each other. Crowfeather is his biological father, though he hasn't been the father in Jayfeather's life. So I wonder if they would grow a bit of a bond, not on a parental level, but grow closer through the time Crowfeather spends in ThunderClan's medicine den. And then maybe Crowfeather dies to cause emotional damage to Jayfeather. And also to Tawnypelt. Overall, everything points to Jayfeather and Alderheart being more important in Changing Skies than they were in the Broken Code or a Starless Clan. And at least Jayfeather will be among the central characters. It's clear they will be some kind of figure that support Moonpa. And I think it's possible she becomes a medicine cat apprentice next book. So far, I'm happy with how they've been included in this arc. The way they appear in the story is very natural and doesn't feel like forced nostalgia bait. I'm looking forward to see what they do. As for what I'm hoping they do, I do of course hope they fulfill my prediction of being protective and supportive figures to Moonpa, as I feel that would benefit both of them and also Moonpa character-wise. But I also hope they get to grow in some way, and not just be a tool for Moonpa's character. That's the only thing I think could be good with Crowfeather's potentially broken spine. That this could be a way for Jayfeather to grow in some way. But I really hope that it ends with Crowfeather dying, because again, I don't want this stupid Tawny Crow romance! I think they have a bright future in this arc. If you have some thoughts about them or thoughts about my thoughts on them, be sure to comment them down below. I read all the comments and would really appreciate seeing your thoughts. That was all for today. I look forward to seeing you next time, when I will be talking about Whitewing and Birchfall, the first background characters to be included in the series. I hope you have an amazing day or amazing night. Bye!